All right, Anjuna. You mentioned something about finding the good in things or the silver lining or whatever, like a cloud has a silver lining. And both of those things are your attitude about something. And through the practice of the teaching of the Buddha, through the Anapanasati, we begin to stop focusing on the event and instead start focusing on uh, our relationship to it. Now, what we mean by that is that let us say we were mentioning talking about duration and how long things last is because of our attitude with it. And when we change our attitude from, oh, it's bad, but it's got a silver lining, we can change that focus into, well, whatever that was, it's not really a big deal. There's nothing to it. Compared to big reality, there's nothing there. So when a butterfly gets eaten in paradise, paradise really doesn't care. That butterfly being eaten is just part of paradise. So if we focus on this present moment, then this present moment is okay. Never mind what it is that you're think that you're having to endure. That in fact you're only enduring it when you're thinking about it, and there's a whole lot of other stuff to put focus on. So instead of a good way of talking about it is change the subject, distract yourself from whatever it is, just get rid of it. Don't think about it. Drop that topic and come back to the reality is that everything is okay. No place to go, nothing to do. Everything is fine. And that's a little bit different from I'm okay, but rather reality is okay. And here is just part of reality. So, but when we're focusing on something, we're focusing in it as I don't like it, or I like it, or I'm trying to find something good in the badness there. And the practice is to get rid of liking and not liking and just coming back to reality, to coming out of our selfishness and our relationship to whether we like things or not, and just come back to no place to go, nothing to worry about, no dangers, the feeling of safe, secure, comfortable, and everything is all right. And eventually the feeling of satisfaction arises. Now, satisfaction is a really, really important point, considering that the Buddha says that he only taught one thing, and that was dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Well, if we understand dukkha correctly, a lot of people misunderstand it and think that it's suffering. But in fact, you cannot be suffering and be dissatisfied. An example of that is if you were somehow a Buddhist, let us say, Jehovah's Witness going around banging on doors trying to give them a track, and you say, oh, this track will help you get rid of all your suffering. And they'll slam the door in your face while they say, I'm not suffering, because they're not suffering. But what they are is they're dissatisfied. That's why they slam the door. So there's a big distinction between dissatisfaction and suffering. And dukkha doesn't mean suffering, it means being dissatisfied. So the major change then is to change from being dissatisfied with something to being satisfied with everything, the all, the big it. your environment. And the environment that you're in, for instance, the room that you're in is the environment you're in. There's no snakes on the floor, no crocodiles, no Russian mafia, um, no farts in the air. Everything is okay. And so if you start to focus on the reality of the situation is that everything is all right. But when I go back and focus on that cloud, then I want it to have a silver lining so I feel better. But if we just stop focusing on the cloud and say, never mind the cloud, everything is okay. Like spilling water on the floor, okay, the rooms are going to be all right. The carpet will dry. Not a worry in the world. Everything is all right.
Do newborn babies suffer?
They cry.
Is
They
it
want. They feel. But I wouldn't say that they suffer. And then, in fact, it depends upon what you mean by the word suffering. Generally, when we mean suffering, we mean great pain. Well, for some infants, any little wiggle at all is a great pain, especially if it's new.
uh, is
Then, in fact,
it,
that's the part of growing up and maturing is to figure out that all the stuff that contacts us is no problem. So, when a young child is learning to walk and they fall down, many of them will cry because falling down is painful. But very rarely does a human, adult, when they fall down, do they cry. Generally, they get back up. Some people want help getting back up. Some people do cry. But the Dhamma way of doing it is never mind. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and boogie on down the road. You're okay. Everything is okay. The world doesn't have problems. Only humans, when they're in a state of dissatisfaction, have problems. So coming out of your state of dissatisfaction into the reality of the situation, the problems don't exist. You made it up. So this is the way to correctly practice is to look at those unwholesome thoughts. I don't like the water spilt on the floor. And say, never mind the water. Everything's okay. Everything is fine. Reality just as it is. In fact, it's a paradise. It's not that the paradise is well suited to take care of you the way you are. It's that through your DNA and through history and all of that, you've adapted to the paradise. So now the paradise is just fine. And when we're in a state of dissatisfaction or even suffering, that means that we're not adapting to the paradise that we're in. This is, in fact, the story of Adam and Eve. Now, a lot of Christians and whatnot think that the story of Adam and Eve is all about talking snakes and apples and the woman did it and all of this kind of stuff and getting thrown out of the Garden of Eden. But the story itself is about them having to put up with the results. Eating of the fruit means putting up with the results. Like a tree, the fruit of the tree is an apple. But we also use fruit in the sense of fruit of our labor, the fruit of the loom, the fruit of our loins, all kinds of different ways that we use fruit as meaning result. That's true in many languages, including Pali. So when we talk about kama vipaka and kama phala, that means either the results of your actions or the fruit of your actions. Same thing. So Adam and Eve had to put up with the fruit or the results of their behavior. And what was their behavior? Their knowledge of good and bad. And because they had knowledge of good and bad, they went around paradise. It was just paradise. And it says, oh, that's good in paradise, and that's not good in paradise. The example would be this tree here is a sal tree. And I like it, except that I don't like yellow leaves. And when it has a yellow leaf, I think I got to cut that tree down because I don't want it to have yellow leaves. Well, if I go there and cut down every tree that had yellow leaves or brown leaves, what kind of paradise would this be? I've destroyed it. That's what happened to Adam and Eve. They destroyed their paradise by judging articles in paradise. They broke it off into duality. This is paradise, and this is what I like and what I don't like. And so when we stop judging, we can just leave paradise the way it is. And it's marvelous. It's a paradise.
Yeah, yeah, it's really it's yeah, these little happenings are occurring here. This is a paradise here, and sometimes I find a dead animal, like a dead frog or something, and I feed it to my chickens, and it's yeah,
Do
that's
the
all part of
chickens croak then? If you feed a
no.
dead frog to the chickens, do they ribbit, ribbit, ribbit? Do they croak?
Oh,
Croak, 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 croak.
they love it. It's and yeah, that's part of the paradise that
Yep,
finding.
that's right. But if you don't like dead frogs, you bury it and give a funeral, you invite a priest, you even get an undertaker and a coffin for the frog. Well, that's
That's
what people do when they have frogs in their family, isn't it?
oh they they
Dead
enjoy the
moms and dead uncles and dead frogs.
oh yeah, part of the paradise.
But it's all part of the paradise. So let's stop focusing little things like dead frogs and take the bigger picture of just that's the way things are. But we
Yes.
have to remember that because we have been taught to think of things in a small way. We've been taught about problems. In fact, we are trained to be victims from our childhood. Mommy comes in and says, pick up your toys, do what you're told to do, clean your room, and then a little later, do your homework, go to school. And the kids don't like doing that stuff. And so we wind up being victims doing what we're told to do and not liking it. And then we grow up with those habits. So basically, what you can say is that we have been talking ourselves into feeling bad our whole lives. And now it's time to talk ourselves into feeling good by taking the focus away from the job and the task and taking it into the bigger picture of everything is okay. Everything is fine. The big it is just nice. We live in a paradise. And so beginning to focus on that way, we become safe and secure and comfortable and satisfied with reality, just the way that it is. But we have to practice. We have to practice.
It's it seems like this original sin that Adam and Eve were supposed to have created, it seems to just be a bunch of dissatisfactions.
Yep, that's the original sin is judging things and becoming dissatisfied because we don't like it. That in fact, you could go so far as to say that the original sin then is because they don't like it, they want to get rid of it, they judge it as bad. And so they start making laws and rules about it. Laws and rules and supposed tos and oughts and idealism and all of that kind of stuff. That's the original sin.
Hmm. Uh, so that is the apple, is that just
That's a bunch of idiots in the Middle Ages that are philosophizing because they don't understand the story. They're focusing on the word fruit, thinking that it's a different kind of fruit. They misunderstand that the word fruit is not a banana or an orange or a watermelon. It's the result of one's actions.
oh.
And believe me, there's an awful lot of idiots in Christianity.
Yeah, that's
They're
a,
looking
a
for,
lot.
go ahead.
Huh? I was just saying a lot of uh, what I've heard Christians telling me is usually the same thing over and over again, and it's just
Well,
a lot of
they're trying to convince themselves. Mon Koch, that wrote Hitler wrote, he has a statement in there that if you lie to someone over and over and over again, at first they'll think it's a lie, but they'll get used to it. In fact, that's the way that Donald Trump operates. Is you keep telling people the same lies, they'll begin to believe it. In fact, if you keep telling the same lies over and over again, you'll start to believe it yourself. And so
yeah.
God is good. That's a lie. When they're thinking about a little God that's more like a sky daddy, maybe a long beard. But if they see paradise or reality, the big picture, maybe we could use the word God for reality. The room you're in is a God.
Hmm. Is Yeah, that's is that at all related? Some every so often I give thanks to this house that I have a house to be in, and uh, I just feel appreciation. I say thank you,
Yes,
house.
appreciate. Yeah, I'm glad this old teak house is nice.
Yeah, and it is so that becomes like a god or uh,
Actually, the reality is that it was a God all along. It's the Christians who are confused because they think that God is a sky daddy.
oh, and if they think otherwise, they're sinning.
Well, they make some mental sky daddy the God. That's actually having an idol worship.
Oh, are they?
Christianity's God is actually an idol that they worship, wanting it to do. That's why they have this thing called prayer. They pray. They want the sky daddy to go do something for them as if it was the daddy in that they had when they were a child. That's why, in fact, many people call a priest a father.
Oh,
They're looking for help because they don't have the confidence that they can handle their own life. They're still victims and they're looking for a savior. But the
oh, they.
teaching of the Buddha is all about becoming comfortable in your paradise. And pretty soon you begin to get that self confidence. You get that uh, the success is actually the fruit of satisfaction. When you get satisfied over and over and over again, that builds on the confidence that leads to success. And success is not a loser. Success is a winner. You become boss of your life. You become the boss of your feelings. You become boss of the thoughts that you have. You become boss of the um, attitude that you have. In fact, the attitude of being a boss is that. Change your attitude from being a victim. Like at one point, when the water spilled on the floor, you became a victim of the water.
Yeah.
But now you recognize you're not so much of a victim of the water. Water spilling, no big deal. Nothing to it. Water spills. How many times on the planet Earth in the past 5,000 years has water been spilled as much as a gallon? Hundreds of
Oh,
millions of times. And we're still okay. Paradise survived. Look how much water is spilled over the Grand Canyon, or how much is spilled over Niagara Falls or Victoria Falls. Waterfalls. That's why they call it a waterfall. So that's part of nature. And in fact, the reason why water spills, why water falls, is because of the nature of gravity. In a way, gravity is a much it's a part of stuff, but gravity is a better God than the Christian God, the Sky Daddy. Why? Because gravity is omnipotent, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Where do you know of where there is no gravity? Even in outer space, there's gravity. You
yeah.
can climb a
Yeah.
high building or you go into the sky, but the gravity is still there, and it's quite a force. Look how much energy a rocket ship takes to try to escape gravity. So gravity is powerful. In fact, you just can't jump up into the sky.
Yeah.
Even athletes can only jump about 10 feet, and that's it. Gravity will bring them back down. And it's always there. It knows. You can't say that, oh, I tripped, but I didn't fall because gravity wasn't watching.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, gravity. That is a real, yeah, it is everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Every,
But gravity is just one aspect of the force of nature. Gravity is why we have air. If there was no gravity, we had no air, we couldn't breathe. Your life depends upon gravity.
uh, interesting.
And not only
Yeah,
that, but the neurological circuits in the mind depend upon chemical reactions, chemical energy, and electromagnetic forces. So you couldn't be alive without magnetic forces, without chemistry. So the nuclear forces, electromagnetic forces, and gravitational forces, those kind of, let us say, realities, it can be the God, because it's real. Sky Daddy's not so real. Sky Daddies are imagination. And yet nobody pays praise to the periodic table. Nobody goes to a power plant and worships a power plant. Nobody does that.
Hmm.
We find a little Sky Daddy up there and say, oh, you help me. They get a whole lot more help from the power plant. You get a whole lot more help from gravity. To get a whole lot more help from the chemical reactions of the air that they breathe. That's the reality. And so beginning to appreciate reality as our God. And God is good in that respect. Everything's a paradise. So in the story of Adam and Eve, it wasn't that some little God threw them out of paradise. It was that they destroyed the paradise themselves with their attitudes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? That's the way that the Buddha would talk. So you have a choice. Are you going to live in paradise moment by moment by moment, or are you going to focus on something you don't like and have unwholesome thoughts about it?
Well, that pushes away the paradise.
Yes, that destroys the paradise. That's having thoughts and judgments of good and evil. That destroys our paradise.
Hmm.
In a way, that destruction of paradise is our hell. So you could say that people create their own hell through their judgments. And they would have a choice. If they knew they had a choice, would you spend your time in paradise or in hell? Your choice.
Paradise.
Then why have you spent so much time in hell? Because you were trained that way.
Yeah.
You were civilized by the threat of danger, by the threat of punishment. Kids are afraid of their mommy and daddy. That's why they do what they're told to do, but they don't like doing it. So it's the threat of punishment, the threat of retribution. The threat of hell is hell itself.
It's source of suffering.
Right. That's the whole point, is that state of dissatisfaction. That's dukkha. And the only thing that the Buddha taught was to see that dukkha and to come out of it immediately. Every time you see unwholesome thoughts, every time you see the bad feelings, take a deep breath and breathe those bad feelings out. See those unwholesome thoughts and change it. See your attitude of a victim and change that attitude to being a winner. We have to practice this over and over and over and over again because we are well schooled at misery.
Yeah, I noticed a couple decades ago that it's more socially acceptable to be unhappy than it is to be happy.
And that's because you're around a whole bunch of people who are unhappy. And misery loves company.
And they
When somebody's angry, they want everybody to be angry.
well, that's not going to help them with their anger.
Nope.
Yeah.
But remembering that whatever they were angry at is just something little, not important. The reality is that they could still breathe. They're still alive. Everything is okay.
Yeah,
But we have to remember to look at that so that we can change our attitude, to change our thoughts, to change the way we feel takes practice.
is is it helpful to be vigilant about every experience.
No, no,
No.
you're not going to do that. That will lead you to failure.
Oh.
Instead, the whole point is to develop the skill of sati, the skill of remembering. And so Goenka had a statement: when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. Why does he say that? Is because normally the student, when the mind wanders away from the breath, they say, oh, I'm supposed to be watching my breath. Oh, poor me. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, it's too hard. And I hear people talking about it's too hard all the time. And that's just another unwholesome thought. So the right thing to do would be to say, I see you. Hot dog, I can see my unhappiness. I can see the mind wandering away into dissatisfaction. I can see it. And because we can see it, we have an opportunity to change it. Most people, they live their lives of quiet desperation and they don't even see their desperation. That's why they're quiet about it.
Oh.
So start to practice remembering to look at your state of mind. Practice remembering to look at the kind of thoughts that you're having. Because the monkey mind is just jumping all over the place and likely to jump in. In fact, the reason that they call it the monkey mind is because wherever the monkey lands, he's still dissatisfied with where he landed.
It's like he has nowhere to go.
Because he's got nowhere to go except to do someplace new that's dissatisfying as much as where he left. And we can start to change that. By coming back to the reality is that everything's okay. This is a paradise. This is nice. The gravity is there. Because the gravity is there, the air is there. Because the air is there, I can breathe. Everything's fine. Thank you, gravity. In fact, I'm going to set up a shrine to gravity. I need a photo and I need some candle and incense and set up a little shrine to gravity. So the next time that I fall, I can say, thank you, gravity. Because if I didn't fall, because gravity wasn't there, then the only possibility is I'd float out into outer space. I'd be dead for sure. So this is the way we begin to think, is to remember that everything is okay. Everything is fine. So this is how we practice. Remember to practice. I would recommend that you practice. In many places in meditation, they say that you need to practice an hour a day. An hour is not much out of 23. But I would recommend, because people don't have a good attention span, is to break that up for 10 minutes, 6 times a day. When you first wake up in the morning and still in bed, start having some happy, wholesome thoughts. Everything is fine. Everything is going to be okay. What a wonderful day. It's part of paradise. And then when you go to sleep at night or when you get into the bed, instead of worrying about what I got to do tomorrow, we can just say, wow, everything is so nice right now. Everything is fine. How comfortable this is. And when we have those kind of thoughts, we don't dream so much when we're asleep. So that's twice a day. You can find other times a day. Lunchtime, break in the morning, going to work. In fact, driving an automobile is a great time to practice looking, to practice watching. Most people drive their cars and they're lollygagging, they're rubbernecking, they're eating, they're yelling at their kids, they're worried about their job. And this is why people have accidents. It's because they're on kind of an automatic pilot, not paying attention to the road. So the right thing to do is to remember to watch where you're going, to not get distracted from all the billboards and all the signs, but watch the traffic, watch the road. Remember to pay attention. When you're out walking, remember to look at the ground. This is part of the reasons why the monks go barefoot when they're walking, is so that they can pay attention to where they're walking, so they don't step on snakes and rocks and spiders and stuff. And pay attention to where they're walking. Same thing as when you're driving a car. So these are times of day, and then we can just take a quiet moment, let us say in the middle of the morning. We just sit down and close our eyes and just marvel at how nice things are. So you find a dead frog, you can give that dead frog to the chickens, and then you can just close your eyes and say how marvelous it is. Paradise right here. If you practice 6 times a day for 10 minutes, pretty soon you'll begin to fill in those gaps and you'll start to remember more often to pay attention to reality, to pay attention to your environment, to pay attention to the paradise that you're in. But we have to practice. Why? Because we've been practicing on focusing on little things for so long, things that break. And so we have to remember to start focusing on the real deal. So, can you practice?
Yes.
Good. Go do it. Everything's fine. Everything's all right. My, what a marvelous paradise. Keep practicing. So, do you have any final comments? Let's go ahead and wrap up now.
Um, it's yeah, just infusion of gratitude of yeah, just those moments of appreciating paradise. That's what those moments are. They're
But you can't appreciate it if you're not paying attention to it.
mm, yeah, that's has to be
Yeah,
part of it.
that's it. Right. We got to start paying attention. Not just occasionally, but start practicing paying attention.
Mm.
Wise attention. Unwise attention is focusing on the self, focusing on who am I, focusing on the past, focusing on little things. That brings about a thicket of views. And a real thicket of views is a religion.
Oh.
A thicket of views with thorns and spikes and hells and heavens and sky daddies and dead men walking, no sex babies, all kinds of really thorny issues. But when you're paying attention to reality, then you can come to see what is dukkha and what is not dukkha. What is wholesome, what is useful, what is valuable, what is real, and what is unwholesome, what is hindering you. So we need to practice wise attention. So you go practice being wise, go practice paying attention to what's real and what's not real, what's unwholesome and what's wholesome, because then you have a choice to make a change.
Just nourish the wholesome.
Pardon?
Nourish the wholesome.
Yes, nourish the wholesome. Pay
Mm.
attention to the wholesome. Be grateful for the wholesome. Keep having wholesome thoughts. So we'll see you later. You go
Okay.
practice. All right.